Yeah, I can hear me. Okay, great. Okay. Morning, y'all. My papers might be shaking because I'm nervous and I'm cold. It's a great combination. Before we get started, before we go any further, what I wanted to do was just take a few minutes to have a little meditation time together. What I want you to do, I'm going to read some scriptures to you. I want you to sit still and quiet here in your seats and just think about the closeness of God. He is here. He's connected. He's connected to you. He's connected to Bree out there and the horses. He's even still connected to our students and our clients or whatever it is that you call them back at your farm. All right. And I need this too. Whew. Philippians 1, 3-6. I thank my God every time I remember you. In all my prayers for all of you, I always pray with joy because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now, being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. Philippians 4, 4-7. Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Psalm 34, 17 and 18. The righteous cry out, and the Lord hears them. He delivers them from all their troubles. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Acts 17, 27 and 28. The Lord did this so that they would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is not far from any one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being. As some of your own poets have said, we are his offspring. Ephesians 2:13, but now in Christ Jesus, you who were once far away have been brought near by the blood of Christ. 1 John 4:13-16. This is how we know that we live in him and he in us. He has given us his Spirit, and we have seen and testify that the Father has sent his Son to be the Savior of the world. If anyone acknowledges that Jesus is the Son of God, God lives in them and they in God, and so we know and rely on the love God has for us. And finally, 2 Corinthians 13:11. Finally, brothers and sisters, rejoice, strive for full restoration, encourage one another, be of one mind, live in peace, and the God of love and peace will be with you. All right, let's pray real quick. Oh, dear Father, we thank you so much for being here with us, for being close. Thank you for bringing us all together from all over the United States and the world here so that we can learn from each other and with each other. I just pray that you would be with us today, help me to be able to clearly communicate. And I thank you for all you have done and what you will do. In your precious name, amen. Okay, if I haven't met you yet, my name is Carrie Altland. My partner out there today is Bree Bryant, and I heard a lot of you saying her name, so I'm sorry if you came to see her. You get stuck with me for today. I'll be talking most of the time, and Bree will be helping me demonstrate. So I'm Carrie. I am from a farm called Lancaster. We're in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Our farm is called Green Meadow Farm, and we're in southern Pennsylvania. Our farm, just a little background on what we do, we're a smaller farm, I guess. We have 6 horses, we also have 2 goats, a little flock of sheep, chickens, 2 adorable barn cats that I love, and there's 2 dogs. And so our program is focused on kids ages 6 through 18 who have gone through some relationship trauma in their life. We provide one-on-one lessons with a student and a mentor and a horse. And they're 90 minutes long. We do lessons spring, summer, fall for 10 weeks at a time. So each student will come for 10 lessons. And they're paired with one-on-one with a mentor. We currently have 13 mentors that are working, and we're giving 21 individual lessons this fall. and we'll be giving lessons until November 13th. So that's a little bit about our program. So last year, if you were here, Bree and I talked a bit about connection and groundwork, and we spoke a lot about, I'm sorry, I thought you had a question. Distraction. So we talked a lot about that, working through groundwork to, we call it connection. So before, she was using the word in sync a lot. I think that's very similar. So you might call it something else in your program. We call it connection. What do I mean when I'm talking about connection? So the definition, we work at Green Meadow Farm from the natural lifemanship perspective, if you've heard of that. And, oh my goodness. So we work from the natural lifemanship perspective, and that is, so the founders of natural lifemanship define connection as, and I'll read it to you, individuals coming together in curiosity, empathy, and attunement, and reciprocal communication and behavior. So in other words, it's working towards a common goal of creating a mutually safe and healthy relationship. Bree has said it's the sense of feeling seen, being heard, feeling felt, and getting gotten. So being in a connected relationship can happen whether we're close together, face to face, or when we're further apart. Wow. So Bree is working on developing some connection right now with the horses behind me, so you definitely watch what she's doing, because we don't, at our farm, we don't typically just go and jump on horses to ride them. This will be a riding demonstration without developing some kind of connection on the ground before we do that. So that's what she's working on there. So when I was talking about connection, we're at our farm, we're usually talking about that emotional feeling of connection. It's really sometimes very difficult for people to be able to describe what that feeling is. When I talk to my kids, my students, I say, you know, if I say, what does angry feel like? You know right away. If I say, what does happy feel like? Sometimes they get it. What does connection feel like? They're not really sure what that is. So we start trying to find that feeling on the ground. A lot of kids, we're going to show riding here in a little bit, hopefully. By the way, we are going to need one volunteer to ride, so if you think of that. So we really try to work on what does that feeling feel like. You can feel it when you're close together. You can still feel it when you're far away. So for example, my family is hundreds of miles away in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. If I stop and think about them, I can still feel very connected to my kids, even though I'm not with them. And I hope they can still feel connected to me. Same with the Lord. I've never seen his face. But when I stop and I read verses like we did earlier, I can still feel very connected to his presence, even though maybe our physical proximity is not very close. Some days we feel closer to him than others, right? That connection, that feeling of connection is stronger. We do try to get our students to be able to learn how to describe what that feeling is. So for me, it almost feels like this warm glow that's around my heart. So we try to get our kids to really be able to describe what it feels like. I had a student in the summer, she said it felt like pink lemonade gurgling around her heart. I had another student who said it felt like cotton candy in his chest. Bree had a student one time who said it was like warm, ooey gooey chocolate chip cookies right out of the oven. So we try to get them to really conjure up a picture or an emotion or like a descriptive word so that they can remember it again later. This is a feeling we want them to be able to find and hang on to, even when they're frustrated with their horse, even when things aren't going exactly how we wanted it to go with the horse. Because that feeling of connection is what keeps the relationship moving in a positive direction and what keeps you motivated to be working on a healthy relationship and not just getting mad and giving up and walking away. So our students, for our students and for us who have gone through relational traumatic experiences, connection was broken at some point. So this is where it's really helpful and healing to work with horses in this. Horses, when God created horses, didn't he make just animals that are amazingly relational critters, right? They work on a relationship basis, and that's why this works so much. But our students, if you ask them what does connection feel like, a lot of times they'll say, I don't know. Because that feeling, when they start to feel it, it can be scary, it can be overwhelming, it can feel unsafe. They may have had in their past a relationship trauma where that person who was supposed to be safe and connected to them wasn't. So that feeling can be kind of hard, but when you're working with a horse, it feels a little bit safer. You're with an animal, it's not a person. You can be a little bit more vulnerable with a horse. So in addition to learning how to develop a more connected, deeper feeling relationship with a horse, I found it really interesting lately. I've been reading a lot of studies about how being on horseback just has, we all know this, but has so many health benefits, just so many health benefits. Studies have shown that the rhythmic movement of the horse's body helps the human brain release endorphins, which lowers cortisol, the stress hormones, and when we have lower cortisol, we can actually have a regulated brain, and we're more capable of thinking and learning and doing new things. We can also problem solve when we have lower cortisol. When these kids are in a heightened level of awareness, they're not able to problem solve through things. There's overwhelming evidence that children who participate in equine activities show positive improvements in communication skills, ability to self-regulate, increased sensory processing skills, and increased feelings of calmness, cooperation, and empathy. I mean, these are real studies that are happening now, so it's really exciting that science is kind of catching up to what God made, and we already know, but it's backed up now, which is great. There's also studies that suggest that kids who ride with an invested instructor or mentor improve social skills, have lower fear, and have diminished social anxiety. And that is what we all want to be, right? We want to be an invested mentor. And if we can pull in the Bible and Jesus and God and introduce him to his enduring love, even better. And also, of course, learning to ride helps with muscle and motor functions, which help gain strength and coordination. So it's just, the more I read, the more astounded I am at just the amazingness that God created and gifted us with these horses. So at Green Meadow Farm, we generally start introducing these concepts of groundwork, of connection through groundwork, which Bree is doing here. So what she's doing is she's introducing the bareback pad. We'd like to have somebody ride on a bareback pad, and she's getting permission from her horse to put it on. So yes, we could just go in there, we could halter our horse, we could slap the bareback pad on, we could put somebody on, and we could haul them around, and we could make them ride. And they may get some of these benefits that these studies have seen, but we haven't worked on the relationship really at all. So when we're working with kids with trauma who have been through broken relationships, we really want to focus on that relationship component. And horses are capable of helping us do that. So that's what's so exciting. Okay, so just keep checking. I know she's very exciting. I'm kind of distracted too. So we do a lot of activities, and actually, Ashley's demonstration that she did earlier showed a lot of similar groundwork activities that we might do before riding with our students. So generally, we have our kids come, and of course they always want to ride, but we will start them out nice and slow on the ground first. So yes, and usually the first day I'm like, what are your goals? And they're like, galloping. And I'm like, okay, we're not going to do that. But what do we have to do in order to ride? And so we will start with groundwork. We will start with haltering and leading, asking for permission to put saddles and things on their backs if we're using them. We often ride bareback too. And so we're working towards healthy attachment. And this is this kind of work where you are right next to the horse. We call this attachment with connection. If you're working on the relationship part, this is attachment. When you are close together, you're working on attachment. Then we will often move to detachment with connection. This is working with your horse at a distance. So round penning, lunging, liberty work. When there is space between you and your horse, you are working on detachment. You're working on that horse. Can we still, the two of us, maintain a connected relationship where we're paying attention to each other? You're not trying to run me over. I'm not trying to dictate everything you're doing. Are we working towards a mutually beneficial relationship at a distance? So there's distance between us. Oftentimes when I'm doing this, and Ashley was saying this also earlier, is this leads to a lot of spiritual conversations. I can bring God how he pursues us, because we can't see him. We are trusting. There's greater trust involved when you're working at a distance also. And then we will move to riding. And that's usually the order that we do things. But like we always say, it depends how we do it. So then when we move to riding, riding is interesting because riding is both attachment and detachment at the same time. It is attachment because you literally cannot be closer to your horse. You are sitting on them, you are touching them, you are all up in their business. You are on them. It's detachment because you're not face to face. You cannot see the horse's face, and humans rely a lot on facial expressions to understand what's going on and to read each other's emotions, and there's a little bit more trust involved. They can't really see you either. They know you're there, they feel you, but you're not face to face. So it's a little interesting, it's both. Riding is tricky. The trick, I was going to say, actually, is to keep that connection, that feeling of connection, the attunement to each other when you're riding. I find that more difficult when I'm riding than when I'm on the groundwork. It can happen. You can do attachment work and you can do detachment work without actually being connected. When you start, we call it at Green Meadow Farm getting tasky. So everybody who's here from Green Meadow Farm here is getting tasky. So how many of us have come into a situation where like, I am going to teach this horse trotting and walking transitions today, and that is what we are going to work on, and you completely lose track of the relationship. Or you have a kid who just wants to gallop and they want to forget all about the relationship pieces. In your real life, how often have you come into a room, you've got your loved ones there, and you have to clean something, and you got and you're running, and you've totally missed, you forgot to say hello, you forgot that your kid is having a hard day, you didn't even notice, you're just task-oriented. We all get stuck in this, at least I think. It's not just me, right? So that's the trick. The trick is to constantly be checking ourselves. Am I working from a place of connection with my horse, or am I just focused on this task? Often, yes, we have a task that we do need to get to. Well, and need, I put that in quotes because often we don't need, or there's a different lesson that we need to be learning in the moment. But how do we stay? So, and that is a big change. When you move from groundwork up onto the horse's back, there's more emotions. Your student can be scared. There's a lot more things going on, and we can lose that connection piece. So how do we keep that connection piece when we have a student on horseback? And honestly, for instructors too on the ground, it's scary, right? Especially when you're new at this, you're like, oh gosh, okay, now I have a kid on the horse, and I got the horse, and I got to lead, and it's a lot to think about. So how do we keep that connection piece? And for people, kids, us who have gone through trauma, one of the most difficult things is staying in the moment. When we get nervous and our brains switch to the fight, flight, freeze, we lose connection and we kind of forget. So if we can help ourselves stay in the moment. So what we're going to do is we're going to have somebody ride, and I'm just going to demonstrate, Bree's going to help demonstrate, different activities that we do with kids initially to help them stay in the moment and help them recognize their emotions. I guess before we get into this, I can tell you a little story, and Melanie, where she is, she knows the story very well because it just happened a few days ago. But kids who have been through trauma often not connected to their emotions at all, especially when they're feeling stressed. So a big thing what we do at Green Meadow Farm is we're trying to get kids connected to those emotions in themselves, connected to this. So when I'm talking about connection here, I'm talking about being connected to yourself and what's going on in you, being connected to the moment that you're in, not letting your brain go to all the other places that it wants to go, being connected to our horse and what is good for the horse, and being connected to God, bringing him right into the middle of it. So when I'm talking about all those facets, we were working with a student, Melanie and I, she's from Bree Farm, and we had students, and we were just trying to work on groundwork connection. So we come up behind the horse, and not behind, we're at their hip, and we're putting a little pressure on in various different ways, and we're asking for the horse to turn and to choose to be with us. I love whoever said that earlier in the first session before, that just said the horse is choosing to be with us. And so they get so excited. And then usually when that happens, we stop and we say, what does that feel like in your body? Right there. That's the feeling. That's connection. That's what we're looking for. So we're trying to have this young girl learn how to get the horse, not get, but she's asking for the horse and seeing if the horse will turn and choose her. And she's asking, like, and we were letting her kind of work through it a little bit. And, if a horse is ignoring you, there was hay. She was eating hay. And Belle, the horse, everybody has a bell, right? So she did not want to turn. She was more interested in the hay, more connected to the hay than she was to this girl. And we let her kind of work through it. And usually when there's ignoring, you up the pressure just a little bit. She couldn't bring her energy up, or she didn't know how to, and Melanie says, I'm curious, what are you feeling right now? And I expected frustrated, bored. What'd she say?
Happy.
Happy.
With no expression.
I'm happy. And I was like, really? And it's just, but that is, so when you have kids, that you ask them what they feel, they might say, I don't know, or they might say, I'm happy, because they don't know. She's saying what she thinks we wanted to hear. She's with a horse, she's working with a horse, she should be happy. Well, she's not. So that's part of our work. So our work for her is to try to help keep going with this and exploring and finding that feeling and finding what happy really is, finding what connected really is. It is not this. At least I don't think so. So are you ready for a volunteer? Yes? All right, do we have any volunteers who'd like to sit? It's going to be a pony ride, by the way. She will stay connected to your horse for you. Would you like to? I saw your hand first. Oh, this gate is hard to get. No. Okay, there you go. Yep. Okay, so she will be doing pony rides today, meaning she's going to stay connected to that lead rope with the horse. It's usually where we start with our students, right? So what I'm going to go over today is just really super basic, how we initially start. Oh yes, she is putting the helmet on, good. You can do almost all of these things without the lead rope also if your kid is getting more advanced. What I have found interesting too is that a lot of kids will not be able to describe the feeling of connection on the ground. They just can't find it. Then you get them on a horse and they're like, oh, there it is. There it is. I'm feeling connected. So ask them again when they're on the horse. And a big part of job for you as an instructor is to be very in tune to what your horse is feeling. If they're not in a mood to have a kid ride them, then don't. Tell the fart story. I told this story last year. We had a horse, Winder. He's the first horse we had at Green Meadow Farm, and he was having a day, and he had said yes to everything. He had said yes to like everything, up until the point where the child was going up the mounting block. When he put his hands on him, he was fine, standing very still, very fine. And he'd put his foot in the stirrup, and he'd move his butt away. And I'd lead him back around, back to the mounting block, put his foot in the stirrup, and he'd go, just put a little, and move his butt away. The horse's butt, not the kid's butt. And I was like, what is going on? And I said, well, because he's moving far enough away. And I was like, he's not saying yes to being mounted. So I was like, why don't we do a little bit more groundwork? Let's reconnect on the ground and see what's going on. So we started leading him around in the circle, and didn't Winder just start farting? Like, the whole way around, like, his name is Winder. We do call him Windy sometimes because he does fart. He has to pass some gas. But he was all around, and he just kind of like, it was wild. And then we went up to the mounting block, and then he was like, okay, yes, now you can get on. Just had to get that out, and he was fine. And so with his mom, we always talked, so sometimes no is not no, not ever. It's just not right now. I have to go pass some gas. And so then with his mom, like, she would be like, if she had to tell him no or not now, she'd be just like, gotta go pass some gas. This is a Winder thing. Like, it's not now, just give me a few minutes, sort of thing. So that was, yeah.
From just a training perspective, when the horses, so he had a definite reason and went right back to it afterwards.
You did.
But sometimes when the horses refuse and are led to refuse in a certain situation, then they think, all right, I just learned something new.
Yeah.
So how do you find that balance? I mean, you would take the student out of it, I would imagine, and then you do the work on your own, but you make sure that they understand. Is there anything else that you would do to prevent that learning of bad behavior, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So Winder he's getting older, and he gets used a lot in lessons, and so he has kind of like learned this trick, and he doesn't so much just turn his butt away anymore, he just sort of like walks off. And so we do a lot of, and not just him, there's other horses that do that too. We try to make it fun, so the whole mountain, and it's training, not so much, and if I have a child who's able to help me train the horse, I definitely get them involved in that whole thing. But a thing that we do for Winder loves treats, so this is positive enforcement. But we get up and we kind of lay on his back and offer a treat from the far side, and he turns his head and he gets a treat. If he doesn't go away, if he doesn't pull, and then I put a foot in the stirrup and I'll get a treat. So we've made it this, so now he's super into it. Hi. I have the mic too.
What? Would you be able to join us in here? So
Sure.
if I talk loud enough, it'll show up on the mic so they can hear what I am saying to our lovely volunteer.
Yeah. If I can open this gate again. I gotta lift some weights.
Derailing your plan.
It's not derailing my plan except for this gate. Okay.
That is tight. That is not a ride for me. All right. Hi, everybody.
Can you hear her? Does that
Can you
help?
hear me? If I talk kind of project a little, is that okay? Everything inside me says, no, I don't want a mic, but I think that might be helpful.
Do you want one?
We would like to have.
Me too. Oh, she gets a fancy rock star one. You get the Madonna one.
Microphones dysregulate me. I don't like it. I didn't know we had this option.
Here, wait,
Okay,
I'm
thank you.
push your rear end. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Okay.
You've my consent.
friends.
That's
Okay.
good enough. Hi, guys. Isn't Carrie awesome? She's like one of my favorite people.
Thank you.
So please keep talking as you need to. I just wanted to give you a little update and talk a little bit about what you saw me doing in the background with Honey before we have our dear volunteer, sorry. Say your name loud enough so everybody can hear it.
My name is Maddie.
Maddie.
And say hi, Maddie.
Hi, Maddie.
So a couple of things. With any horse that we're going to get on, I want to see a couple of things. One, can they participate in a little bit of attachment? Two, can they participate in a little bit of detachment, which Carrie talked about? Is my horse okay with somebody being taller than them? Right? We've had a couple of times where we walk up the mounting block, and Honey is very well trained, it appears, because she chose not to move off. But who's noticed her get a little like starey? Like, oh, what are you gonna do? She did the same thing with the bareback pad when I went to put it on her the first couple. She's like, what are you doing with that? And you probably saw her, we call it the pivot and protect, where she went, I'm okay with that thing by my nose, but if you try to get back to where you could put it on me, I'm gonna turn my body and ask you not to do that. So I just waited. I said, hey, if that's right here is the closest you feel comfortable, I'll wait until you feel a little better, and then I'll back off and approach again. I need her to be okay with humans being on both sides of her body. I cannot tell you from a horse training perspective how many times I've had somebody say, well, she was fine, and then I get a leg halfway over. Who can imagine that cartoon in your head? And it's like, well, okay. So what happened was the human's body went from the left side of the horse over her back to the right side of the horse. And suddenly, that human is on both sides of her body. So my usual follow-up question to people who have that problem is, well, can you lead your horse on the right? They go, oh no, she won't let me over there. They found your problem. Your horse is not okay with you being on that side of their body, and you suddenly appeared there, and they couldn't get you away. Right? The horse is not running away with you. She's running away from you. She just can't figure out how you're keeping up. So I don't want that to happen to Maddie. I doubt it, because we specifically asked for a horse, and I know the horses here can be ridden and all that. I also know that I'm probably not going to get the level of connection and attunement with Honey that I would with one of our horses at home, simply because I've known her for 10 minutes plus a couple hours from my workshop yesterday. So we will have to, for today, accept a level of connection that's not where I would envision this relationship going at some point. Does that make sense to everybody? We call it the get-mo, good enough to move on, right? So we're a little better than when we started. Not really where I would want to go, or not really quite where I want to get her, but good enough to move on for today. So I am going to have you lean across her back again, and just put your hand over there. You can put a little weight on her and see if she notices or responds to you being over there. So who saw this ear move half an inch? It's like watching paint dry if you don't realize how cool it is. So just wait there, you're doing great. So I'm noticing with Honey, again, she is able to manage the tension that she has in her body. Can you see the little bit of tension she's got? Like her nose is wrinkly, her eyes are a little hard. But that level of tension for her is currently manageable. She's going, I can feel that tension in my body, and the way I'm choosing to deal with it is not something that's going to hurt my student. Okay? Who has a horse at home who does not know how to manage their own tension in that way? Right? I have one who we got beautiful, beautiful big Palomino gelding who we got very inexpensively because he flunked out of Western Pleasure School. Because he figured out that when a human tells you put your nose to your knees, you can buck really, really hard in that position. And so that was his way of managing that tension. We had to help him figure out you can have some tension inside and still stay connected. Right? Carrie and I are doing that right now. We don't have zero tension out here. I promise. I have some tension. She has a little bit of tension because we have to make this make sense and be entertaining for you. But that level of tension is not preventing us from staying connected. Does that make sense to you? So I just want to give you like the little disclaimer with what's going on with Honey today. If we were at home, we would do more. And you guys know the limits of borrowing property in somebody else's horses. So that's just kind of the sit rep for where we're at. All right. There we go. Back off. Back off. We're just going to give her a second here. You guys see the blinking? Like non-normal blinking? It's like,
This.
okay. And we're going to let her get done with that. The other thing that I don't want to do, I get stuck in this trap of saying like, hey, we don't want our horses to check out. Well, there is no nervous system response that's bad. It's just one that is more appropriate for the situation. I have a vet at home who I adore. Incredible diagnostician, knows how to get me the best treatment for my horse with the least amount of cost, doesn't have the best stall side manner. If my horse's response to him coming in the barn is to check out a little bit, I'm going to let him do that. Who checks out when you go to the dentist? That's an appropriate strategy. Moving into flight or fight when you go to the dentist is not an appropriate nervous system state. It's safer for you to check out. So if Honey's management of this is, I need to check out just a little bit, I don't want to take a coping mechanism away from her that's working. Does that make sense? Some of you, this is super hard with our clients, because some of you will send kids home from your ranch, they get home, their best coping strategy is to check out a little bit, because you cannot fix their home situation for them. So while they're at the ranch, I want them happy, I want them connected, I want them engaged, I want them not checked out. But I'm not going to try to completely eliminate that nervous system state, because they still need it somewhere. If Honey still needs to check out just a little bit, I'm going to let her do that. I don't want to take away something that's working. Okay? Does that all make sense? Okay, let's get going. Please interrupt me if I start talking about stuff, because I'm like, you can't hardly get me to shut up now.
We got time.
I do not have a watch. My watch broke on the way
I-
down here, so I am blissfully unaware of what time it is, and it's glorious.
It happened to her last year, too.
It's
Watch
awful.
broke on the way here.
Yep.
Different watch.
Different watch, still broke. All right, so whenever you're ready, this is where you need to have a little bit of acrobatics. I'm going to have you put a little bit of weight on her withers with your both hands, and then you're going to slowly pick up one leg and see how she feels about that. Just going to see if she can stay regulated enough. Perfect. Do you think, pause, go ahead and sit down, or put your leg back down. Do you think you need a leg up, or can you get on the horse from there? Okay. If at any point, I'm going to help you get on, if at any point you get up there and you go, you may get off. If at any point you need to stop and have a break, you may get off. If you just need to slow down and rest for a minute, we can do that. I would rather you go, ooh, this is worrying me, I should get off the horse. I'd rather you get off and go, oh, you know what, I didn't need to get off, than spend the rest of the session wishing you weren't on a horse. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay. So for all of you, that is the little speech is something I give anybody before I put them on the horse. It is okay to get off. I'd rather you get off. What's that expression? I'd rather be a live chicken than a dead duck. I'd rather you get off and go, oh, I didn't need to get off, than stay on and get to a spot where the horse gets you off.
Now, for my younger kids, too, or kids that don't know horses, like, can get themselves on and off, Maddie can get herself on and off. I asked them, how do you want to let me know that you want off? So we just did this, and the child said, I will say down. I mean, sometimes it will be a signal, pat my head, something, but he said, he was nervous, and I said, if you want down, what word will you say? He said, down. And I was like, okay, good. So you say down. If he didn't end up using it, but he had an out. So he knew he had an out.
So I love what just happened there. Who saw Honey's tension come up a little bit when Maddie got on her? Honey didn't choose to leave. What did she do? When we sat there with her in a little bit of tension, what did she do? Who noticed? Her head came up, and then what? After we waited for a minute.
Her eyes open.
Yep.
Turn to you.
She came and checked in with me. This is a skill for us that I want all of our horses to have, because at this point, so I'm going to guess this is not the first time you've been on a horse. I'm going to guess this is not the 101st time you've been on a horse, right? Just a hunch. Our kiddos who come to the farm might be the first time they've ever been on a horse. My student who's up there, and we have a deer horse, one of my favorite horses on the farm is a 16-3 chestnut mare who's off the track. Perfect child's horse, right? Kids go, I want the big one. Then they get on the horse and they look down.
And they practically
And they're like, she's tall, Miss Bree. I'm like, uh-huh. I don't think she's that tall, but she's big. She's a big girl. My student at that point is not capable, if they're dysregulated, because this is scary, I've now been on the horse before, and even those of us who are experienced about being on horses have felt a little dysregulated when you get on an unfamiliar horse the first time. You're like, ooh, how's this going to go? I don't know where this creature's buttons are. What are her strategies for dealing with I don't know what all that stuff is. She might not be capable of offering this horse connection. That's why I'm here. Because now Honey knows somebody is driving this flying umbrella. I am here to offer you connection if the person on your back can't. It is not fair of me to send her out here with somebody who can't offer her healthy connection and go, do with it what you will. Best of luck to you, honey. That's why I'm here. Does that make sense? So, first thing I had her do was take a great big deep breath. And some of you who were in my workshop, we talked about what a big breath is. A big breath means you feel it all the way from your nose down to your pelvic floor to the bottom of you. There she goes. I know, babe. I've got you. Right? So when that shifted for you, she just had to move a little bit, and she got a little closer to me. That's all. And now we've got a breath. So now we're ready to walk. So I was just waiting for Honey to give us a little bit of relaxation, a little bit of tension. It's not all the way gone, but in a big old lick and chew, a nice deep breath, checking in with me again, we're ready to walk a little bit. All right? One thing I do with a lot of my kiddos, with little boys, we call these eagle hands. With little girls, I tend to say butterfly hands. Everybody put your two hands up like this in a V, lay them over top of one another. Imagine you're putting that on the withers of a horse. Now I want you to push on her withers like you're trying to shove her withers toward me. Push, 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 harder than that. Good. What happened to her butt when she did that? Who knows? Try them again. Show them again. What happened to her butt? Did it come up or go down onto the horse? It went down harder on, I know, that feels funny, doesn't it? It went down harder on the horse. Now I'm going to have you do that again. Watch her feet this time. What happened to her feet when she does that? Do they go close to the horse or far away? They go away from the horse's sides. Who's had the kid that gets scared and goes, and your horse, your well-trained horse goes, oh, that's a cue for a trot depart. Okay? If we grab the horse's mane and pull forward and hunch over, you tend to lift your rear end. You can do it in your chair. If you lean forward, your butt comes up. Step one to falling off the horse is your butt comes up. Right? And my kids who are trying to hang on for dear life are squeezing with their legs. And my beautiful, well-trained horse is like, oh, faster? Yes, ma'am. So I give this position because anytime she feels wobbly, she can actually push her rear end harder on the horse. At the same time, she's taking her legs away and making it very clear to the horse, I don't need faster right now. Thank you. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So I am going to ask Honey to just walk with me a little bit, and I'm going to have Carrie, if I can just walk with her and focus on her a little bit, can you run her through, we were going to do the body check-in, or what did you want to do? Whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Good? Okay. There she goes.
So where I often start with kids when we're first walking, I'm leading them.
How's that feel so far? Good.
Just like Bree is. And I'm at, it's a
There we
leader.
go. A little release of tension.
And I'll ask my students, and Maddie, that's here, let's just pay attention to what's happening in your body. So I'm trying to bring them here to the moment, what's happening in your body. So Maddie, what parts of your body do you feel moving?
My hips.
Or hips?
Mm-hmm.
Any others? Your legs. Are there any parts of your body that are not moving, staying real still?
Anything that feels stiff.
Stiff, tense.
I tend to carry
Shoulders.
Me too.
So I had a cute little guy, and we'll talk about him a little bit while we do this.
Me too.
But what happened? Who got on a horse for the first time. It was a pony, little pony. He got up there, and he was like
Jumper training.
this. I said, Hayden, parts of your body are moving.
So what are
I don't know.
as your
Parts of your body are not, like all of me. So we started head down toe, just kind of relaxing one thing at a time
she's going
until he could sit.
Right. Left. So just you don't have to move
with his
too
legs
much,
hanging
but
down
just
to the
like
side. So we worked on relaxing, bringing him back
move
into
your
the
shoulder.
moment,
When
feeling
you see the left
relaxed.
shoulder move forward, you just move yours. Left.
And then I also asked him what part of the horse is moving.
Very good.
So I wanted him to connect with his horse a little bit. What parts of the horse are moving? Are there any parts that are staying still? So we kind of went over that. Then another thing we often do is the five senses. Have you know what the five senses are? I always have to remind myself because I inevitably forget one. But it's seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, tasting. Bring the child back into the moment. I'll put my 5 fingers up and I'll say, can you tell me 5 things that you see right now? Look around, 5 things.
The light, the barrel, the sand, mountain block, horse.
All right, great. And sometimes you make it fun. You're like, you're way up higher than me. What can you see? You can see more than I can see up there. What are 4 things that you can hear?
4 things?
4 things. So we're going to work down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 4 things.
Voice, the wind, people talking,
One more.
and
Her feet. Yeah. And then we'll do what's 3 things that you can smell.
the horse,
Horse.
barn, dust.
Lunch.
Gets you deep breathing.
Yes.
And like the wind.
The wind. Yeah, you can smell it. What are 2 things you can feel?
I can feel her winter coat in the mist. And I can feel the
Yeah. And one thing, this is always awkward and weird, but what's one thing you can taste?
I can kind of taste the dirt in the air.
Yeah. I'm always like, my stale coffee. That's what I got. So that's a very simple exercise to get the child in the moment. Another one that we do is different breathing activities while up on a horse. I like to do 4 breaths in, 4 breaths out to the rhythm of the horse's walking. We do that over and over. And then we talk about how you can do this when you're feeling frustrated. You can do this. So another little story with this guy. Or we'll talk about what sort of emotions. So when he first got up, I said, what sort of emotions are you feeling right now? And he said, nervous. And I said, well, how do you know you're nervous? And again, trying to connect. How do you know that you're nervous? And he said, my belly feels all bubbly. And he's 6. And I was like, okay, let's try some deep breathing activities. So we did breathing in 4, breathing out 4. I even had him with his hands, and Maddie could do this too. While we're walking, I have him kind of pacing with his hands while he's walking the horses. And we're doing that.
You already did it with your shoulders a little bit, right?
And he's breathing, and he's kind of paddling with his hands. And then he goes, woo! And I said, Hayden, you okay? And he goes, one of the bubbles just popped. So we did this again, pacing, and then he goes, woo! And I said, more? And he goes, I think 9 bubbles popped. And so this cute little kid is figuring out that nervous feels like bubbles in his belly, and they're going away as we're riding, as he's feeling that rhythmic motion, as we're going around his bubbles, and he's able to tell me what that's feeling like in him. His mom was so impressed that he could put words and pictures to these big feelings that he has, and usually he explodes in anger, but today he was enjoying it and like feeling those bubbles pop. It was so cute. Another thing I do with this walking with my hands with kids, another one that I'm working on, whew, your bubbles are popping too. So the first verse I read today had that phrase in it, he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion. A student of mine, a different student, is learning that verse during the time. And so that rhythmic motion, and I have him kind of paddling his hands and saying, he who began a good work in me will complete it. And so we keep doing that to the rhythm of the horse, and it is sticking with this kid. It's great. that's another way you can incorporate your mentorship into the lesson. Some other things you do.
Well,
Go ahead.
I have an idea, just because she's there. If we wanted to move from, so we would call this like regulation riding.
Yeah.
The kiddo is not up here asking and making any requests of the horse other than, is it okay for me to be on your back? And so we're going to do whatever we need to do to help them regulate and stay nice and calm. If I have a kiddo, which I bet a lot of you do, who are like, but I want to gallop across the fields, right? What they're talking about is what we might call independent riding. Where I'm not here to help, I'm the safety net, me, leaves. So what we might start to do to transition from this kind of regulation riding where the kiddo is making no requests to independent riding where the kiddo is making all the requests is we might do something really simple. I'm going to ask Honey to come with me. She's pretty good at sticking with me at this point. And so you have noticed that your body is moving along with Honey. And it's kind of an interesting sensation, right? Because your body's moving a whole lot and you're not doing it. What I want you to notice is we've been following the movement of her body a little bit. What I'd like you to try to do is start to lead that movement a little bit. So if you kind of notice how much she's moving and how much she's moving you, just play with what happens if you would move your body a little more, if you would pick up your energy just a little bit more. I know, something changed. Did you see her look at me? She went, Mommy, what happened? Okay, good. Now, think about what would happen if you would slow your energy down and get more still. Ooh, that girl. She goes, that feels like we're done. She quit riding. We must be finished. Okay, so we're going to keep going. So we would start to play with that and see, can my horse notice, especially if it's a horse like Honey who may have checked out a little bit, does my horse notice when something changes in the rider? There you go. Maybe. Next thing I might start to notice is, can my rider start to lead those changes just a little bit? So here's what I'm going to have you do. There we are. There's our girl. We're just managing tension all over the place. So I'm going to have you keep your energy going. I'm going to ask Honey to come here. I'm going to ask you to keep your energy going and see if you can get her to just pass me a little bit. See if you can just get her to go ahead of me. So look up where you want to go, ride like, we're leaving Miss Bree behind, and see if she can detach from me a little bit when you ask for that. And we might not get there today because she's pretty happy to stay attached. That kind of feels like what she's used to doing. A little bit more energy, like look like you want to go crashing through that gate. Ooh. So we might play with this and start to see, can we leave Miss Bree behind a little? Do you see the tension coming up in the horse when she starts to think about, man, what if we pass Bree and she's not here to hold my hand anymore? Do you see the tension on her face? So she goes, oh, I'm not ready for that yet. So that's where we'd be to play with that. I know, babe. Too much attachment. Thank you. I actually would like a little more space if you don't mind. Does that make sense? So we'd slowly start to see, can she go around? If I stay here, can you have the horse go out and around? Can she detach from me? Sometimes that is a struggle for the horse. Like today it feels like it's more a struggle for Honey than it is for Maddie. Sometimes it's a struggle for the kid. Because I say, hey, you're going to go walk around without me. And they go, oh, no, I can't do that. What if something happens? Like something's going to happen. And it's going to be amazing, right? So we would have to play with how far can we go away and when do we need to come back, right? We'd start to play with that a little bit. I hear a reverberating. Am I okay? All right. We might also start to play with what would happen if I just simply took the lead rope off the horse and allowed her to stay attached to me. I don't have a good enough relationship with Honey, and I like Maddie enough that I'm not going to try and do that right now, just because I feel like that's not an appropriate request. But we'd start to play with that. I'd start to play with, can Maddie start to notice, ooh, let's do a really simple one while we're standing here. So her attention is kind of over that way. I'm going to have you take your right leg and just you're not kicking her, but just very gently lay that leg, there, stop. I'm going to wait for her again. So when you touched her with your leg, what happened? Who saw the shift? Her ear went, what? You rang? All right, let's try that again. Really softly. So her ear's already back there. I want to see, I'm going to give her lots of room. Just gently, gently, gently tickle. I'm going to see if she there, quit. See how she went, whoop. She just touched her head a little bit. Now do your left leg. Just gently touch her. See if she starts to notice. Yep, you might just have to tap a little bit. We're going to wait. But see if she starts to go, ooh, that person up there, quit. Good. So she moved her head just half an inch, but she went, oh, there's a left leg. Oh, we might start playing with that. Can I have my rider, whose legs have just been flopping around, start to go, hey, do you notice me over here? Hey, do you notice me over here? By the way, this is also a great way to teach your horse that legs don't mean go forward as fast as you can all the time. Right? We have a dear one of those at home. He's like a little speedboat.
Yeah.
He even gets like higher in the front, like a boat. Like his engine gets down. It's kind of fun. But we had to do this with him where you would touch him like that and he'd be walking. I need him to figure out that he can stay connected and notice when I'm making a request that doesn't always mean forward. So we would start to play with some of that. Is that good?
It's good. So I think we're just about out of time. I did want to just encourage all of you to remember a couple things.
So I'm going to have you say
I was actually with my daughter just the other day. She was at voice lessons, and they always do a warm-up, right? There's always the boring, like the scales and the warm-up, and they do the same thing every time. And it's the most boring part of the voice lesson. She doesn't always love it, but they always do the warm-up. But I started thinking, I think it's the most important part. It gets her warmed up, it gets her vocal cords warmed up, it gets her in the moment. So I started challenging myself and my students to always do a warm-up. We're going to warm up our connection muscles before we move on to something new. And so don't be afraid to repeat these little, when you find something that kind of connects with your student, but repeat it every lesson. Warm into it. You warm your horse up, you warm the muscles up, but warm up those connection things. Do a little bit of a connection work before, and also do this yourself. Don't just do it with your students, but do it yourself. It was said before, you can't lead and you can't teach what you don't know. So practice it, have fun. It's so much fun. You get to just like forget the agenda, forget the whatever it is that you felt like you had to work on that day. Not every time, but work on doing just these fun little things with your horse on your own so that you know also what it feels like and you can teach that to your kids. So that is it. I think we're about out of time. If there's questions, come see us or ask for the good of the order. But thank you.